talk about one of my favorite metal artists of all time, Ozzy Osbourne. Here with Martin Popoff, an Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know, what would you call that? An Ozzy Osbourne?
I'm just a massive fan since the beginning, of course. Yeah.
Right.
So I've done. We've got.
You're a bit of an authority on Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah. We've got. This is the recent book that just came out. Actually, 80s and so Ozzy's not even in this one, but this is my Black Sabbath. In the 80s and 90s, recently came out. This is Black Sabbath in the 70s, so obviously there's a lot of Ozzy in there. Then, of course, I did Steal Away the Night and Ozzy Osbourne Day by Day. This is a full color throughout. It's out of print right now. But yeah, I do love my Ozzy. You can get my books, of course, at martinpopoff.com. The 2 Sabbaths are totally available right now. So yeah, let's talk some Ozzy.
So we have, with Ozzy Osbourne, we have a huge catalog of albums to work with. A lot of them I love. I like everything from No Rest for the Wicked. I like Osmosis even, but I think generally when we're talking about the best Ozzy Osbourne albums, I would consider probably the first 2, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, to be the best Ozzy Osbourne albums. But I know that you have a bit of a contrarian pick when it comes to the Ozzy albums.
Yes, so of course our show is called The Contrarians, and this only works when one of the 3 of us on our team feels that we have a pick that is a contrarian pick that we are constantly over the years battling with everybody, those drunken kitchen table discussions of favorite albums. So my favorite Ozzy album, and I've had many major arguments with people about this debate.
Get ready for another one.
Yeah, Bark at the Moon. I love Bark at the Moon. Loved it the day it came out. Loved the first 2 albums as well. But should I tell you a little bit why I like this one?
Sure,
absolutely.
What do you think?
Okay.
I'll argue you in a minute.
Okay, so yeah, Bark at the Moon. I find a funny thing. 19, 20 years old, they have this band. They come out. There's no internet, so the myth and the legend of Randy Rhoads sadly dies in that flyby prank accident. He's in there. He's the guitarist in this band, but I'm not a guitarist. There is no, like I say, the legend hasn't grown at this point. So essentially, I don't know Bob Daisley is writing the lyrics and stuff like that as a kid, right? So I'm loving this band. I love Ozzy. It's a solo band. He's got this guitarist, great guitarist, and all that stuff. But when he's sadly not there anymore, it's not like I feel like this band completely dies or changes, or I can't be an Ozzy fan anymore. It's like when Bruce Dickinson came in Maiden, there was no problem. When Ronnie James Dio came in, there was no problem. So and this is the guitarist changing. So no disrespect to Randy, but to me, the band essentially continued on just fine, and I thought they continued on great because I think Jakey Lee is just an incredible, underrated guitarist, proving himself even more so when you get to Badlands, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. Red Dragon Cartel is an incredible band. You can tell this is a guitarist who is very creative, takes a lot of chances. He's a very artistic guy, so that's why he's kind of mercurial as well. He's had problems being in bands and stuff, right? Interesting dude. But I think he does an incredible job on this record, and what I like about it is I love the production of it. I feel like this is a really sort of efficient, super powerful heavy metal machine at this point. Racing out of the blocks with Bark at the Moon, an incredible song with an incredible riff. I love You're No Different, even as a mellow song. I think is one of the great mellow songs. Now You See It, Now You Don't is actually one of my favorite Ozzy songs of all time. I think it's a great, underrated song. Rock and Roll Rebel is just kick-ass. I love that it's a little bit commercial, but it's still super heavy. To me, that sounds like a Zakk Wylde song, actually, like something off of No Rest for the Wicked.
Yeah.
Center of Eternity, blazing heavy metal, like a really cool, super heavy song. So Tired, Not Crazy About. Slow Down is their Iron Maiden song. I was playing it again this morning. Great Iron Maiden song, Slow Down. Very melodic. And Waiting for Darkness is like a cool proggy one. So to me, it's almost a flawless album. And I want to hear a little bit about Diary and Blizzard of Oz. I have my complaints, a little bit of complaints about them, especially the first one. I was never a huge Blizzard of Oz fan, but basically those are the reasons. I just think this is a great record, from production to lyrics to singing to Jake's contribution. It's just rock solid start to finish.
Mm-hmm. So you went over a lot of information there. I'm going to try to knock one of those points out one at a time. So let's start with the first thing you brought up, which was the guitarist. So that's one of the classic Contrarian arguments, is Randy Rhoads compared to other Ozzy guitarists, including even Zakk Wylde, which you already mentioned. Jake E. Lee, interestingly enough, does not play any of the Ozzy stuff today live. If you go and see him, you will not hear Bark at the Moon or Shot in the Dark from Ultimate Sin or anything like that. And he's even gone on in interviews and talked about, because you mentioned like his guitar style and how it was produced and stuff like this, and his playing on the album, like his creativity and stuff. But interestingly, he's actually mentioned in interviews that he believed that his guitar playing and his guitar production on the album was actually held back a little bit because he felt that Ozzy didn't feel he was good enough to take Randy's place. And this is directly from an interview that he gave on That Metal Show. He basically says in the interview, confessed he did not like the mix of Bark at the Moon. He felt Ozzy wasn't sure he was the guy. And so, this is a quote of his, and so he kind of held the guitar back because he wasn't sure I was capable of taking Randy Rhoads' place. That's what it felt like to me anyway when I heard the mix for the first time. I really did hate it for a long time. Now, 30 odd years later, it's grown on me, even though 30 years later he doesn't play it live.
Yeah, I can understand that. I actually think, oddly enough, I would say Ultimate Sin is his least creative work in terms of a full album. This is probably his second least creative, because I just worship the two Badlands albums, not so much the demo stuff later. And I think Red Dragon Cartel, he's super, super creative. So I can understand him holding back. I can understand him maybe even not liking this that much, because it does feel like, you know, he does have to play the heavy metal goon a little bit in this. You know, he's almost above this in a way. In what he does on here. But so I understand that he is playing by the rules. The mix, I have no problems with the mix. The production, the mix, I just think the album sounds ferociously heavy.
Right. Yeah. What did you think about the remaster version? You know how they were putting all the remaster versions out, and they were removing the bass and putting a different bass track in with somebody else other than Bob Daisley?
Well, actually, I believe they only did that on the first two albums.
Oh, they
the
did?
Notorious
Okay.
switching out of the drumming and the bass.
Yeah,
I think they only did that on that. And that was obviously for whole different reasons. This one, they had less problems going on with the future of people suing each other over what's going on. No, I feel they had no problem with the sound on this. I mean, I actually take a little bit of issue. Not a lot of issue with the sound on Diary and Blizzard. It's more what I like. I mean, I love Diary. Diary is my second favorite, and they're almost neck and neck, and I think those songs are really great. But the first album, I will argue to the death with anybody. You know, in terms of, like, I think the first album is way below Bark. I just find it when that album came out. Yeah, when that album came out, we were actually, as angry young metalheads, a little disappointed with it, because it's not that heavy. It's got No Bone Movies on it. It's got D and Revelation, and Crazy Train was even a little sing-songy. I'm not crazy about Crazy Train. I'm not on the Crazy Train.
Suicide Solution is heavy.
Suicide Solution's pretty heavy. It's a little bit too thumpy. Yeah. I Don't Know is a great song, but yeah, it's a little bit too commercial and a little bit poppy in a way. So we were a little bit taken aback by, and it's very eccentric. I mean, Randy has an eccentric sound. Lee has an eccentric sound. The production's a little eccentric. So it's a little bit kind of swimmy, bashy. I don't know how to explain it. It's not as efficient and professional sounding, but that is some of its charm. I mean, you cannot fault those two albums in terms of super charm and identity, and Randy brings an incredible identity, way more of an identity than Jake brings, really. But I still love the whole band package on Bark at the Moon best.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying as a metalhead. When you go back and listen to Blizzard of Oz, maybe it's not the heaviest Ozzy album, and there is a little bit of like a kind of a pop beat going on with some of the songs, but I mean, like, when you go from like Mr. Crowley, which is an epic Ozzy song, probably one of my favorite Ozzy songs, to, like you mentioned, I Don't Know, Suicide Solution. Like, those songs bring up the lows of Blizzard of Oz enough. Like, the highs are high enough to bring up the lows to the point where I overlooked things like production.
Yeah.
Um,
And Diary, I mean, you can't fault Diary. Right?
Diary's
Over
excellent.
the Mountain, incredible. Flying High Again's a little commercial. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, I don't think is great. Believer is great. Little Dolls is cool. Tonight, SATO is also one of my favorite Ozzy songs of all time. Diary, there's a lot of kind of proggy stuff on here. It's actually a pretty adventurous album when you look at it.
Excellent
right?
album. Look at the
Yeah.
the artwork too. It's
Yeah,
just awesome.
yeah.
Ozzy just rocking out there, and he still looks like he's in the Black Sabbath days.
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
which
that's
I
so
love.
cool,
Black
yeah.
Sabbath.
And yeah, SATO and Over the Mountain are way up there in terms of my favorite, Ozzy songs of all time.
And
for
I
sure.
would say that the production on Diary is a little bit better than Blizzard of Oz, if that's something that you're going to take into consideration.
Yeah.
I don't think Bark at the Moon is that much produced better than Diary of a Madman to give it the edge in terms of production. But I noticed when you had read Tonight, you kind of gave it that, like, eh. I would think that So Tired is probably... And like Ozzy has this thing on all of his albums, there's always kind of like this sappy ballad that he puts on there for some reason, and I think the worst sappy ballad is So Tired from Bark.
Yeah, maybe I was getting that a little bit wrong. I think You're No Different is the one that I think has a pretty cool. You're No Different has a really cool lyric and chorus. I think that one's a pretty good. You're right. So Tired is definitely sappy. It's not very good at all.
Would you say it's the worst song in the album?
Yeah, I would say so. And I was playing this a little bit this morning to get prepared, and I do realize there's a little more keyboards on this than I recalled. There's some keyboards that stab right out. I was quite surprised to hear that. But I just think the writing is just rock solid on this, and you got to give them credit for coming back and to be able to get that quality of writing out of it after the tragedy that befell the band, with Randy. But here's my Blizzard. Actually, this isn't my original Blizzard, but I just think Goodbye to Romance, Crazy Train. Yeah, No Bone Movies. I'm not crazy about. Steal Away.
Goodbye to Romance, like for one of the sappy ballad type songs, that's probably one of my more favorite ones.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And Revelations.
Yeah.
I like both of those songs a lot for slower kind of ballady songs.
Yeah.
I will mention, since we're talking about the ballady songs, I found a blistering review from metalstorm.net, Pierre Tombale. Probably one of the few times he's going to get a shout out, by the way, but he gives Bark at the Moon a 5 out of 10. I'm going to quote a lot of his stuff because he hates the album. It should have been called Unfulfilled Great Expectations, or maybe it should have never been released. Among the given 10 songs, 9 are misses and 1 is a plus, leading to the conclusion that you rather get yourself the title track somewhere else and leave the rest alone unless you're a die-hard Ozzy fan. Then everything for you is a must-have. Although considering the frustration about the death of the bandmate and close friend Randy Rhoads and the partly self-reflected lifestyle of Ozzy, this album is nothing but average. He goes on to blister, he goes through every song and blisters each one, other than the title track Bark at the Moon, which he says is like a 10 out of 10 song, and every other song is like a 0 out of 10.
Yeah.
Basically.
Wow. Well, I have to respond and fight back and I mean, look at this again. I can't see how you could say Center of Eternity is not great. Slow Down is a funny one. I mean, I was playing that again, and it is very melodic, but it is such an Iron Maiden song. I love Waiting for Darkness. Now You See It, Now You Don't. I just think that's just one of the great underrated Ozzy songs. I just love that big thumping Sabbathy kind of beat to it. I love the kind of technical heavy riff to it. And Rock and Roll Rebel, my God. I mean, that song, it's a little bit simple, but just the groove that they get and the great production, the Max Norman sound on that. I mean, I think that song, again, it just reminds me it is so Zakk Wylde, right? And I love No Rest for the Wicked. No Rest for the Wicked is incredible. Right?
That's probably my second favorite.
Yeah. And that one just I just see Zakk wailing away, legs spread, hair flying, right, playing Rock and Roll Rebel. It's just so for him, right? So it's really cool.
Basically, like if you go to read his review, basically says the album lacks spirit, is way too thin, and way too 80s sounding. So that's basically his review.
Well, the 80s sounding ones are the 90s records, really.
Well, I think
the early 90s, and definitely The Ultimate Sin is. It's not even 80s sounding; it's just cruddy sounding, right? They just got such a dirty sound on that record.
Well, if you picked Ultimate Sin, we would have been in a real argument right now.
Yeah, not a lot of people would pick Ultimate Sin, that's for sure.
But I mean, No Rest for the Wicked came out in 89, so it's still like technically an 80s Ozzy album. But it's really so much heavier. It came out a few years after Bark at the Moon, but so much heavier, and the songs are so much
Yeah.
more Ozzy. Like, it almost sounds like they jump back to Diary of a Madman
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Blizzard a little
To
bit.
me, No Rest for the Wicked is the argument you have when you start saying Flick of the Switch is your favorite AC/DC album.
Right.
Because people do that, right? I love Flick of the Switch, and
Uh-huh.
I have that argument with people a lot. But No Rest is almost their Flick of the Switch. It's almost like all right, forget trying to be commercial. We're just going to rock out, and we're going to make this incredible heavy album. And it feels like a self-produced, a little bit. I mean, it's still very plush sounding, but it just sounds like they just like are giving up on the second guessing and trying to have big hits and just saying, let's just make a heavy album for 1988.
Right. Before we get into like album sales, I want to bring up one more review. So All Music, Steve Huey gave Bark at the Moon a decent 3.5 stars, but he said it was competent, workmanlike set of heavy metal featuring the crunching title track, while calling Lee a standard metal guitarist without Rhodes, neoclassical compositional ability or stylistic flair.
Yeah.
So he's comparing again Lee to Rhodes and saying that he doesn't have the same ability or style.
No, absolutely. Randy he brings that classical thing to it. He brings that bizarre sound, that super overdriven, take over the whole mix sound. Because one of the cool things that they did on those first two albums is they have this sort of thing that I always associate with Queen and Sweet, where the guitar takes over and it actually diminishes what's going on with the bass and the drums, because it's just so lively and vibrant in the mix, which is kind of cool. And obviously he has that incredible soloing style, just the way he thinks. He's just a very different guitarist. So in terms of if you want to have a guitar battle between these two albums, I would say that Randy wins the guitar battle. But when you just take the whole package, and Jake being integrated into the band and the production and the songwriting, I just think Bark stands up really well. I mean, I know some fans who plump for Bark over those early ones, but to me it's always been really close between Bark and Diary. But I would put Blizzard way behind Bark.
Right. Okay. Now if we get into album sales, all three of his first three albums sold excellently. I think Bark at the Moon was triple platinum, so was Diary. Blizzard of Oz was actually his highest selling album ever, with 5 times platinum.
Yeah.
First to No More Tears, which was 4 times platinum. And then the next two would be Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, which are neck and neck. So you can't really take album sales into consideration, because those are, like, anybody would die for a triple platinum album, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, the songs that we perennially hear over and over at sports games and everything are Mr. Crowley, a little bit of the intro to Crazy Train. Is it the intro to I Don't Know as well? I think you hear I Don't Know, Crazy Train, and Mr. Crowley at sports events.
I would probably say his most famous song is Crazy Train. Like, if you listen to the radio, that's what you're going to hear on the radio.
But you also hear at sports events, you will hear the intro riff to Bark at the Moon.
You will hear Bark at the Moon, and Bark at the Moon was also in Grand Theft Auto Vice City for you gamers out there, so we'll give a nod to that, because it's...
I don't know, do we hear anything off of Diary at sports events? I don't think so.
Not
High
so
again
much,
a little
but
bit?
I think if you're an Ozzy fan, Diary of a Madman is probably the choice for the best album. I think if you're an Ozzy fan, that's the choice. And if you're a general fan and not a huge metal fan or a huge Ozzy fan, then Blizzard of Oz would be the choice. And that kind of leaves out Bark at the Moon as not really the choice for either Ozzy fan or general fan, in my opinion.
Good point. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, they're close. I understand it's the contrarian choice. Definitely I think Diary will win in almost every case.
I don't think anything after No More Tears would come close. Although, do you ever get No More Tears as an argument for best Ozzy?
I have heard that. It was such a massive album. It's got some great hits on it. I think you're now into that generational thing where what was the magic album when you were 15, 16 years old, and because Ozzy was huge. He was almost bigger at that time than he was in the early days.
Yeah, for sure.
He was just a massive institution at that point. Much to the chagrin of Tony Iommi and Sabbath all along, right? Ozzy just never stopped. He's just always been a massive star, which is really cool.
Right.
So,
cool.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up for this episode.
Alrighty.
Just remember to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Remember to check out Martin's webpage where you can get Sabotage: The Early Days of Black Sabbath, which is an excellent read. If you're a fan of Black Sabbath, you're going to learn a lot of stuff about the early days that you did not know and discover even other albums from the Vertigo Records and early Sabbath demos that you didn't really realize were around. So there's a lot of cool stuff in that book, a lot of cool other stuff on Martin's website, and check us out on social media.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you later.
Cool. All right. That was fun. I love Ozzy.